Silas Blackwood did not look up when the stagecoach rolled into Pine Hollow. He stood beside his horse, one hand resting on the worn leather saddle, staring at the ridge above town as if measuring the snow still clinging to the peaks. He had come for a wife, not for love. If you have ever made a decision because survival demanded it, not your heart, stay with this story. The coach door swung open. A woman stepped down. She was smaller than he expected. Dust covered her gray dress. Her bonnet had lost its shape in the wind, but she did not stumble. She stood still for a moment as if letting the ground accept her. Then she lifted her chin. Silas watched her without smiling, his scar pulled tight along his cheek. He had seen enough of people to know how they looked when they lied. This one did not look like a liar. She looked like someone who had run out of places to go. "You Laura Vance?" he asked. His voice sounded unused. "I am," she replied. Her eyes held his for one long second, not bold, not weak, measured. Behind them, men on the boardwalk whispered. "Male bride," someone muttered. "Poor fool," another said. Silas ignored them. He stepped forward and took her carpet bag. Their fingers brushed. Her hand was cold, not just from the mountain air. "Storm's moving in," he said. "We ride now." She nodded once. No complaint, no questions. They left town before the sun touched the ridge. The trail climbed fast. Mud gave way to rock. Rock gave way to snow. The wind sharpened. Laura gripped the saddle horn, her knuckles pale. Silas rode ahead, leading. He did not look back often. He did not know how to speak to a wife. This was an arrangement, two strangers sharing labor against winter. Nothing more. By dusk they reached the clearing. The cabin sat low against granite. Smoke curled from the chimney. The forest pressed close around it. The Silas dismounted first. He helped her down. His hands were firm at her waist. He stepped away quickly. "It holds heat," he said, nodding toward the door. "Roof doesn't leak." She studied it. It was not beautiful. It was not welcoming. It was built to endure. "It will do," she said. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke and cured hide. One room, one bed, one table. A rifle above the hearth. Silas placed her bag near the wall. "I sleep on the floor," he said. She blinked. "You are the husband. I am the host." He did not look at her when he said it. He knelt and fed the fire. Sparks rose. Silence settled between them. Later, while she unpacked her few dresses, a knock came at the door. 3 sharp raps. Silas stiffened. No one climbed this high without reason. He opened it halfway. Deputy Miller stood outside, hat tipped back, eyes narrow. "Evening, Blackwood," Miller said. His gaze shifted to Laura. "Stayed there too long." "Sheriff asked me to remind you," Miller continued. "Harboring fugitives carries consequences." Silas did not move. "My wife isn't a fugitive." "That so?" Miller pulled a folded paper from his coat. "Boston's asking questions about a woman named Laura Vance." Laura went still behind Silas. The air in the cabin tightened. "Questions about theft," Miller added casually. "And improper conduct." Silas stepped fully outside, closing the door behind him. The wind hissed through the trees. "You've got no warrant," Silas said quietly. "Not yet," Miller replied. "But men with money tend to get what they want." He glanced toward the dark trail. $50 is a strong reason for some folks." Silas's jaw worked. Miller smirked. "Keep your wife close, Blackwood." He mounted his horse. "Winter's long up here." The deputy rode off. Silas stood in the fading light. He watched until the hoofbeats vanished. When he re-entered the cabin, Laura was standing near the hearth. Her hands were clasped so tightly the skin had gone white. "You heard," she said. It was not a question. Silas removed his coat slowly. "Is it true?" She did not answer at once. The fire popped. Outside, wind pressed against the shutters. "Yes," she said finally. "But not the way they say." He looked at her, truly looked. Her shoulders were straight. Her eyes steady, though something trembled deep inside them. "I fought a man who thought he owned me," she said. "And he called it theft when I refused." Silas's chest rose slowly. "You cut him?" he asked. Yes. Silence filled the room, not cold, not yet warm, measured. Silas walked to the door. He slid the heavy bolt into place. Then he crossed to the window and shut the outer shutters tight. He turned back to her. "No one takes you from here," he said. His voice was low, not loud, not dramatic. Certain Laura swallowed. "You don't even know me." Silas stepped closer. "I know what I saw in town," he said. "You didn't look like a thief." The wind struck the cabin hard. Snow began to fall, thick, fast. Silas moved to the fire again, fed it. He laid his rifle across the table, not as a threat. As preparation, Laura watched him. This man she had married for survival. This man who had expected nothing more than labor and silence. He had chosen a side without hesitation. Outside, the storm swallowed the trail back to town. Inside, 2 strangers stood facing a winter that would test more than wood and stone. And down in Pine Hollow, a rider unfolded a second letter by lamplight. A letter promising payment for the return of a woman who had run too far. The rider smiled. Then he saddled his horse. Part 2. The storm did not fade, it tightened. Snow struck the cabin in hard bursts, rattling the shutters like thrown gravel. Inside, the fire burned high. Silas sat at the table, rifle across his knees. Lara moved quietly, folding her dresses back into the small chest. Neither spoke for a long while. If you think danger waits politely at the door, you have not lived in the mountains. Near midnight, the horses outside shifted. Iron stamped once, then again. Silas lifted his head. He heard it, a faint crunch beneath the wind, not snow-falling boots. He stood slowly. Lara's breath caught. "How many?" she whispered. He held up 2 fingers. Then 3. The latch trembled. Someone tested it gently. Silas stepped beside the door. He did not rush. He did not shout. He waited. The latch lifted. The bolt held. A curse came from outside. Then a fist struck wood. "Blackwood," a voice called. Smooth, cultured. Not a mountain man. "Open up." Silas glanced at Lara. Her face had gone pale. "I know that voice," she said. He nodded once. The voice came again. "Mr. Blackwood, you have something that belongs to my employer." Silas rested his hand on the rifle stock. "She belongs to herself," he said through the door. A short laugh answered him. "Property disputes are best settled calmly." The bolt shook harder. Another man moved toward the window. Silas crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled Lara behind the stone chimney. "Stay low," he murmured. The shutter splintered. A pistol barrel pushed through the broken slats. Bang, the shot tore into the ceiling beams. Wood dust rained down. Silas fired once through the door. A shout followed. Boots scrambled. The horses screamed. Another shot cracked from outside. It struck the wall near the hearth. Silas moved with steady purpose. He tipped the heavy table on its side, creating cover. "Back window," he whispered to Lara. "There's a ravine behind the shed." She shook her head. "I'm not leaving you." He looked at her, not angry, certain. "You won't?" Another blow slammed into the door. The hinges groaned. The bolt would not hold much longer. Silas grabbed a small pouch from the shelf. He thrust it into her hands. "Take this." "What is it?" "Dynamite." Her eyes widened. "For blasting stumps," he said. "If they get through, light it and drop it at the door. You'll be inside. I'll be behind you." The door cracked. Wood split. A boot kicked through the lower panel. A hand reached in to pull the bolt. Silas swung the rifle like a club. Bone cracked. The hand vanished. A howl followed. Outside, the cultured voice turned sharp. "Enough." Silas heard the scrape of something heavier. A lantern. They meant to burn them out. Flames licked the outer wall. Smoke began to curl through the roof seams. Lara's breath hitched. Silas grabbed a bucket and hurled water against the inside boards. "Ridge roof," he shouted. "Snow's thick. It won't catch fast." The door finally burst inward. 3 men rushed in. Silas fired once. The closest fell backward into the snow. The second man lunged. Silas met him chest to chest. They crashed into the hearth. Coals scattered. The third man aimed at Lara. She did not scream. She struck the lantern with the iron poker. It shattered. Oil splashed across the floor. The man stumbled. Silas broke free and drove his shoulder into him. They tumbled across the boards. A gunshot thundered. Pain exploded in Silas's side. He staggered but stayed upright. Lara saw the blood spreading through his shirt. Something inside her hardened. She pulled a match from the shelf, struck it. The tiny flame flickered. The cultured voice shouted from the doorway. "Don't be foolish." She held the match over the dynamite fuse. Her hands were steady. "You leave," she called, "or this cabin becomes your grave." Silence. Wind howled through the broken door. Snow drifted across the threshold. The fuse hissed to life. Silas moved to her side. He did not try to stop her. He stood with her. The 3 men outside saw the spark. They hesitated. The cultured man swore. "Fall back." Boots pounded away from the clearing. The fuse burned low. Silas grabbed the stick and flung it into the snow outside. A blast shook the clearing. Snow and earth erupted. Silence followed. No more footsteps, no more voices, only the storm. Silas swayed. Lara caught him. "You're bleeding." He pressed his hand against his ribs. "It's through and through." She dragged him to the bed, tore his shirt open. The wound was angry but clean. She pressed cloth against it, held firm. His breathing slowed. "You should have run," he said. She looked at him. "I ran once," she replied. "Not again." The storm eased toward dawn. Smoke drifted upward through broken shingles. The cabin stood, scarred but standing. Silas lay propped against the wall. Lara sat beside him, reloading the rifle. Snow glittered in the early light beyond the shattered doorway. Down in Pine Hollow, the cultured rider waited. He had lost men, but not his purpose. He watched the ridge from town with narrow eyes. And he began planning something far worse than fire. Morning did not bring peace. It brought witnesses. By sunrise, smoke from the blast curled above the ridge like a signal flag. Men in Pine Hollow saw it. They saddled horses. Sheriff Brady rode first. Not with a posse hunting a fugitive. with townsmen who had heard the shot in the meeting hall. When they reached the clearing, they found the cabin broken but standing, door shattered. Snow churned by boot prints, blood frozen dark on the boards. Silas stood on the porch, rifle in one hand. His shirt was bandaged tight across his ribs. Lara stood beside him, not behind him, beside him. Sheriff Brady dismounted slowly. "You two alive," he called. Silas nodded once. They came in the night. Brady stepped into the cabin. He studied the broken door. The blast mark in the snow. "How many?" "3, Silas said, one limping." Brady's jaw tightened. He knew what that meant. Thorne had not left town. He had regrouped. Behind the sheriff, townsfolk gathered quietly, miners, farmers, even Henderson. They looked at the damage. Then at Lara. No one laughed, no one whispered. "They burned your place?" a miner asked. "They tried," Lara replied. Her voice did not shake. Sheriff Brady removed his hat. "This ends today," he said. He turned to the men behind him. "Anyone here want hired guns deciding law in this valley?" Silence. Then a rough voice answered. "No," another. "Not in my town." Boots shifted in the snow. Men who had once muttered now stepped forward. Sheriff Brady faced Silas. "Can you ride?" Silas adjusted his grip on the rifle. "Yes." Lara's hand touched his sleeve. He met her eyes, measured. She gave a small nod. They rode down together, this time not alone. Pine Hollow did not look the same. Men stood along the boardwalk, arms folded, watching. Thorne waited outside the sheriff's office, hat low, duster clean, 2 strangers at his side. He saw the group approaching, saw the rifles. His smile thinned. "Well," Thorne said lightly. "Looks like the hermit brought friends." Sheriff Brady dismounted first. "You crossed a line," Brady said. "You fired into a courtroom." Thorne shrugged. "Unfortunate accident. You tried to burn a cabin. Allegations?" Silas rode forward. His horse stopped inches from Thorne. Snow crunched under hooves. "You shot at my wife," Silas said. No shouting, no rage, just fact. Thorne met his eyes. "Your wife is wanted property." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Property. The word did not land the way it had before. Mrs. Gable stepped from the edge of the gathering. "She is not property," she said sharply. "She saved my child." Henderson cleared his throat. "She paid her debts." A miner spoke up. "She stood her ground in court." Thorne looked around. His support had thinned. "Money travels," he said coolly. "Boston has reached." Sheriff Brady stepped closer. "So do we." He held up iron cuffs. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, arson, and assault." Thorne's jaw flexed. "You think you can hold me?" Brady answered calmly. "Long enough." The 2 hired men beside Thorne shifted. One glanced at the rifles lining the street. They backed away first, hands raised. Thorne realized he stood alone. He reached slowly toward his coat. Every rifle lifted at once. He froze. The moment stretched. Wind slid down the street. Snow dust lifted in the air. Then Thorne dropped his hand. Brady snapped the cuffs closed. The sound rang clear. Silas did not smile. He did not step forward. He simply watched, as Thorne was led toward the jail, as the doors shut, as the threat that had climbed the ridge was locked behind iron. The crowd began to break apart. Not cheering, not celebrating, just steady, resolved. Sheriff Brady approached Silas and Lara. "You won't have trouble from Boston," Brady said quietly. "I wired the marshal this morning." Silas nodded. Lara exhaled slowly. The weight she had carried for years loosened. Not vanished, but loosened. Sheriff Brady looked at her. "You're free here." She met his gaze. "I always was," she said softly. The ride back to the cabin felt different than any before. Not rushed, not hunted, just quiet. Snow glittered under a pale sun. The ridge rose ahead, scarred, strong. At the clearing, Silas dismounted carefully, his ribs still tight. He studied the broken door. The scorch marks. He began repairing it without speaking. Lara gathered splintered boards. Set them aside, worked beside him. Hammer strikes echoed through the trees, rhythmic, steady. When the door hung true again, Silas stepped back, tested the latch. It held. He turned. Lara stood near the porch rail. Her hand rested low against her stomach. He walked to her, placed his hand over hers. Snow began to fall again, soft this time, gentle, not driven by rage. Driven by season. "You still want this life?" he asked. She looked at the valley, at the endless trees, at the cabin patched and stubborn. "I chose it," she said. "I choose it again." Silas nodded once. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulled her close, not shielding, not guarding, holding. Down below, Pine Hollow returned